I'm about as real as they come.
All my beats tailored by Joe. House Digital.
Maserati, Rick in Detroit. Convertible bird in Miami. Graduated summa cum laude. Strip club made a tsunami. Carlton Hines with the ball game. Grateful Edmonds with the snowflakes. Craig Pettis in the M-Town. Sal Magluta with the boat game. Falcone with the cocaine. Like Freeway Ricky with the plug game. Like Monster Cody in South Central. Larry Davis from close range.
We're learning more about the mass shooting that unfolded Friday night outside of the Balcony Bar on Magazine Street.
Now, it turns out, according to a law enforcement source, the intended target of that shooting was a target in another recent shooting. As Natasha Robin explains, there are now fears that more similar violence will happen.
A normally quiet night on Magazine Street turned into chaos when a mass shooting unfolded outside the Balcony Bar Friday night.
There was a crowd of people out here. A car did slow down. No one thought anything of it.
Moments later, a law enforcement source says at least 50 rounds were fired from a car in what may have stemmed from an ongoing feud between rival groups. 6 people shot, including 4 women and 2 men. One of them believed to be the intended target, 23-year-old Nairobi Davis. A police source says Davis and his associates were leaving the balcony when his rivals opened fire. The source says that's when Davis's associates returned fire.
It wasn't until there was a pause and a second round that we saw people sort of getting out of the way that dictated we might want to move.
Davis is no stranger to law enforcement. He was the suspect in the October 6th homicide of 2 construction workers outside of a church on Annunciation Street. 2 others were shot in an exchange of gunfire. Shooting unfolds in front of an uptown church. Police arrest 22-year-old Nairobi Davis. He's booked with 2 counts of second-degree murder and 2 counts of attempted murder. Court documents now reveal what police say unfolded last Wednesday around 1:20 in the afternoon.
This guy in the car, is he okay?
At the time of the shooting, 4 men working for Groundwork New Orleans were on the job when police say gunmen pulled up in a gray Ford F-150, got out of the truck and opened fire. All 4 of the workers were shot. 2 of them, 25-year-old Derek Copeland and 19-year-old Zernell Lee, died. According to the report, police say several of the men who were shot were in possession of semi-automatic firearms, and investigators believe there was an exchange of gunfire between the 2 groups. Court documents reveal suspect Davis showed up to a hospital a half an hour after the shooting with a gunshot wound to his shoulder. They say the Ford F-150 used in the shooting was stolen from Jefferson Parish and later found on fire in Algiers.
The prevailing theory in law enforcement circles was that the double homicide, double murder that Nairobi Davis was arrested for was retaliating against the people that had been arrested and were working at the Annunciation Street Church.
Davis got out of jail on a drastically reduced bond, and then the DA's office later refused the charges. We reached out to the DA's office for comment, but have not heard back. Mayor Cantrell says it takes the entire criminal justice system working together.
This again points to arrests that were made, bonds that were issued, and cases that were refused.
Only days after Davis was back on the street, a source says he survived an attempt on his life in Algiers. A law enforcement source says someone opened fire on a truck believed to be associated with Davis, but instead they killed a 7-year-old girl riding in another vehicle.
Period. And people in our city who live in our communities know exactly who did this senseless act. No doubt about it.
New Orleans Mayor LaToya Cantrell with strong words for whoever is responsible for the death of 7-year-old Dylan Burton, but also for the public.
It really calls upon all of us, the entire public, the family included, to give us any information that they can to not only solve this particular matter, but also to prevent other senseless acts of violence to occur.
The family tells Fox 8 they believe the shooting was a case of mistaken identity. I asked Superintendent Ferguson about that.
The family seems to think that it was a case of mistaken identity.
That is a part of our investigation right now. We're not ruling out anything. We're looking at every aspect of this investigation.
So this is a classic example of the retaliatory street justice and the carnage and the collateral damage. So unless and until he is arrested and taken off the streets, they're going to continue to hunt him down.
Yo, we back. It's your boy Popalot. Mobb. We on our way to Louisiana with it. New Orleans to be exact. Chopper City in the ghetto. This way I'm going to need all my guys from the NO in the comment box. We in the city. Now today we are going to be covering the guy that I took it upon myself to name 9 lives, because it seems like he's been in a lot of situations where it only take one and you would be gone. And the person that I'm talking about today is going to be a 23-year-old man from New Orleans by the name of Nairobi Davis. Now, before I get into the details about Nairobi Davis, I want to talk a little bit about the city of New Orleans. And me personally, I would consider New Orleans a gang city. And I know when I say that, they're going to have some people that ask themselves or say to themselves that every city has gangs. And I'm not disputing that. What I mean is some cities where gangs pretty much control the atmosphere. And I'm going to say New Orleans is going to be one of those cities, with a city like California. I would say even New York now would be considered a gang city. But if anybody remember New York, or I could say old York, they would remember it being a city where you was pretty much on your own. Maybe your family will hold you down. Almost probably like a city like Detroit, I want to say. Chicago is another gang-controlled city. So they're going to be gangs in Wyoming. They're going to be gangs in South Dakota. But gangs are not going to be controlling the environment like in some other cities, is what I'm saying. And in a city like New Orleans, your affiliation means a lot. In an article posted on knowya.com in 2018, it would go on to say there are about 50 gangs in the city, and the age range of the gang members range from 50 years old down to teenagers, with a lot of gangs that we know and heard of, like the 110ers, the 39ers gang, the Harvey Hustlers. But it's plenty others, like the Young Melf Mafia, the Bird Gang, D-Block Boys, Fisher Fools, Whitney Boys, Shire Boys, Mid-City Killers. So in a city with that many gangs, it's almost like you want to affiliate yourself with somebody so you're not a loner, almost. And we are not sure if that's the case with Nairobi Davis, but media outlets would go on to report him as a reputed gang member. And in October of 2021, 4 people would end up shot outside of a church on General Taylor and Annunciation Street at about 1 in the afternoon, where 2 people would end up dying. Police would arrive on the scene and they would find all victims shot, and they will also find several semi-automatic handguns, leading them to believe it had been a shootout between 2 groups. Now, as the investigation went forward, they determined that a Ford F-150 was involved in the shooting, and it wouldn't be a week later where police would arrest Nairobi Davis for the quadruple shooting and the double murder, and he would end up being released on a $600,000 bond. Now, I'm going to take this time to say that's one of his lives, but really it's 2, because in most states, if you are charged or suspected in a double murder, you are not getting any kind of bond. You're most likely going to be arraigned and tried on those charges with that evidence that they have in hand. And his second would be not being struck and killed by one of those 4 people in that shootout. Now, 2 months after he was arrested and released on the day after Christmas in 2021, on December the 26th, a 7-year-old girl by the name of Dylan Burton was shot and killed while she was riding with her mother in nearby Algiers. Now, even though the mayor would go on to speak out about the crime, I noticed that no suspects were arrested. Now, after the shooting, the family felt like it was a case of mistaken identity, and after an investigation by the police, they would determine that Nairobi Davis was the suspected target of that shooting. Now, just me trying to put the pieces together, the vehicle that Dylan Burton happened to be riding in on the day after Christmas was very similar to the vehicle that was used in the quadruple shooting in front of the church in October. So I'm assuming that authorities would believe that the assailants assumed Nairobi Davis would be in that pickup truck. Now that leads us to a mass shooting that would occur on April 29th of this year, where 6 people would end up being wounded, exiting a popular bar called The Balcony on a Friday night at around 10:30 on the first week of Jazz Fest. Now, police would arrive on the scene and find that 4 of the victims were women, and they would find more than 50 shell casings on the scene of that shooting. And it wouldn't be long before 2 males would show up at the hospital, one of them being Nairobi Davis with gunshot wounds, and police would determine that that shooting also targeted Nairobi Davis, and it would begin to spark fears that as long as he was on the streets, he would be a target no matter where he was or what time it was. I saw some media reports where they jumped to say that this was going to be retaliation for him bonding out for that quadruple shooting. But at this point, who knows? Because they have a 7-year-old that was killed, and I'm sure her family feels a certain way. Not to mention, if he's a reputed gang member, the gang members that he was beefing with before that. So this is just a whole situation. And if you want to NO, you better be careful. It's your boy Popalot, man. Y'all make sure y'all follow me on Instagram, on Twitter, POP_A_LOT. Y'all get in the comment box, man. Y'all let me know if y'all think New Orleans is a gang city or not. Am I wrong? Y'all let me know what cities we need to go to, what gangsters we haven't covered. And I'm going to be back with some more real trill spill shit. You already know. It's your boy Pop. Mobb, Mobb, Mobb.